came about? Well, a few weeks ago, Craig and I, we put a update on our Facebook page sharing about the Taj Mahal. And there was quite a discussion following it about travel safety in India, mostly from women speaking about their fears of being attacked. And if you can see in my comment, which I have a red arrow going to, I had nothing to contribute. And I said that I know nothing about this. And now we're talking about acid attacks in Delhi. Now, I don't know anything about this because I rarely pay attention to the media. So I'd heard of the gang rape in Delhi before, but I didn't think too much about it. Obviously, I've had a bit of compassion there because I just didn't feel it was a travel-related incident. It feels like it's something that happens to women all over the world. We have the same threat in our own backyard, but that doesn't stop us from going out and living our life. So I do have reservations to travelling to India, though, and I haven't been there because of my trepidation about the crowds and the constant harassment and poverty, because these are the only stories I've heard in the negative form from travellers who have been to India. So after this update, Mariellen contacted me offering to write a guest post on our site dispelling the myths, and I suggested we do this webinar instead and invited Reena to join us. So I'm intrigued about travel to India, as I know that you all are here who are joining us, and I hate knowing that people won't follow their dreams because they might feel too afraid or are ill-informed. So our two guests today, Reena and Mariellen, are here to offer their expert advice and make you feel more comfortable. So just a quick survey I had some of you fill out. So as you can see, this is about your concerns about travel in India as a solo female. And of course, the majority there are saying they're most concerned about unwanted attention by males, closely followed by violent crime against women. And then the crowds, the constant attention and the poverty come last. So I just want to let you know that Reena and Mariellen here are chatting with us today, not as experts on statistics and social cultural factors, etc., but sharing their personal experiences through travelling in India. So they're not here to tell you that there are no dangers travelling in India, just as there are dangers in every country we travel to, but to empower you to practice safe travel practices and perhaps to look beyond the media hype and to maybe see what India can offer you as a destination. So we're here today to help eliminate your fears so you can embrace your calling to travel to India. I'm guessing that you have a strong calling to travel to India. Most people who go there love it and feel that they were called to visit there. So I believe that you must follow your calling no matter the intensity of your fear. So with that, let's just introduce you to the ladies who are going to help us today. Reena Tory, she's a passionate soul-seeking traveller, conservationist and the founder of Mantra Wild Adventures, which is a boutique travel company specialising in personally crafted private journeys that peel back the layers of India. Now, her company's motto is to travel on purpose, and Reena's aim is for her clients to have an India experience that changes their lives forever. Mariellen Ward is a professional travel writer and cultural explorer. She's based in Toronto but sometimes lives in Delhi. Her award-winning travel blog, breathedreamgo.com, is about meaningful adventure travel, and it is inspired by her adventures and travels in India. She does write for many print and online sites. She co-founded the Toronto Travel Massive and founded the We Go Solo online community for female solo travellers. And that, of course, inspired us for our hashtag, We Go Solo India. And Mariellen considers India to be her soul culture, which is an expression I absolutely love. And I'm sure that we can all connect to that idea that somewhere in the world there is a soul culture for us that's not necessarily the culture of our birth. So with that, I'm going to pass over to the ladies, and we're going to get straight into our chat about travel in India. So welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think we might dive straight in. And I'd love for you to start tell us a little bit about yourself and what makes you such devout travel fans and devout fans of India and advocates for travel in India. So, Mariellen, I've got you on camera. Would you like to jump in there?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me and Reena on this webinar. I think it's great to kind of dispel some of the misinformation out there and empower people. I completely agree with your message. We're definitely on the same page. And very, very happy to share my experiences in the webinar, on my blog, and just basically wherever I get a chance to also help empower women to overcome their fears. And in fact, that's exactly what I did. I mean, my blog is called Breathe, Dream, Go, and the name is actually a mantra: breathe, dream, and go. And it's actually what happened in my life. To make a long story short, I was actually in quite a very deep depression following several losses in my life, including the sudden loss of my mother, which you know, had a really strong impact on me, a lot of grief. And it was one of the things that inspired me originally to travel to India, as well as I'm a longtime yoga student and a whole bunch of other factors too. But I originally traveled to India in 2005, and I was racked with anxiety and nervousness before I went. I had never done a big trip before. I wasn't an experienced backpacker or solo traveler, I can assure you. I was just kind of an average person, you know, with my job in Toronto, but I really, really felt I needed to do something big to shake up my life. I needed to have an adventure. I needed to, you know, it's like that saying about throwing yourself off the cliff. I really needed to do that, and so you know, I decided for me, I am one of those people who felt very called to go to India, even in spite of all my apprehensions and fears. And it took me a year, almost a year, 11 months of saving and planning. And then I jumped off the cliff on December 5th, 2005, and I went to India, knowing basically sort of knowing one person in the country. I had a ticket dated for I was supposed to be there for 6 months. I had a ticket. I left in December. My return ticket was dated June 2nd. I had no idea what was going to happen to me in those 6 months. Suspected it might be, you know, like a very long, dark night of the soul. Suspected it might be awful. I'd heard all those, you know, horror stories about travel in India, Delhi belly and the crowds and the chaos. But I do have to say, back then, this issue of India being particularly unsafe for women was not, it didn't have the media, it wasn't under the media spotlight that it is today for whatever reason. It was not one of my concerns. I never came across that. I came across that there was, you know, lots of travel challenges, and that, you know, that India really forced you to look at yourself. And but this idea of India being unsafe for women particularly, no, it wasn't one of my fears then. Still isn't, actually. So that was it. So I went. That was my first trip. I've been back 6 times since then. So I guess you can figure out that that trip actually turned out really well. I actually call it I call it a magic carpet ride now.
Yeah.
So it was a great trip. It was you know, it was the cliche. It was life-changing, totally and utterly life-changing trip, and it's just had so many wonderful, beneficial aspects on my life. I could probably talk about that all evening, but I won't.
That's great. It's great to get an insight and to see how you were feeling before you went travelling, but went anyway, and then where that led. Yeah, fantastic. Which is so important for people to realise that the fear is there for everybody, but there are ways to manage and control it. So let's jump over to Reena. If you'd want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Reena, and what called you to India and why you love it so much.
Sure. Thanks, Caroline, and thank you so much for putting on this awesome webinar. It's great to be on with Mariellen as well. For me, I am of Indian background, so I did grow up with the Indian culture, but from a young age, I really rejected my culture. I didn't like the traditional stereotype roles of, you know, women in the kitchen and the men, you know, sitting outside, and because I came from a single parent family, I really kind of rejected that side of it. And, you know, it's not something that's specific to Indian culture as well. It's a societal thing. And then as growing up, that rejection continued. But in 2002, I took a trip to Canada for a working holiday. And it was actually there in Vancouver, Canada, that I started to embrace my Indian culture. And most of my friends were Indian. I spent a lot of time with family there, and it was like discovering this whole new world. And it wasn't for another 3-4 years that I really started to get this deep desire to want to go to India. And it was on my way back to Australia. I stopped in Hawaii, and I had a bit of a spiritual experience. And as an animal lover and a tiger lover, I just had this this pull that I needed to go to India in the next couple of years. And so I did plan for that trip, but I don't think I planned it well enough. You know, when I did step off the plane in Delhi, I was thinking, oh my God, what am I doing? You know, I can't believe I'm here. I spent 2 months traveling around India, and you know, I did it in ways that were unsafe. I ended up in situations where I was traveling alone at night because of train delays, ending up in local buses that were full of mainly men, you know, encountering some harassment. But the one thing that I did learn was being that, you know, very confident and, you know, aggressive in situations where I needed to, you know, speaking back or, you know, making myself feel comfortable. And, you know, even if I wasn't confident, I really showed that. So that's what really kept me safe, and this underlying feeling that I was taken care of at a higher level. I always felt that there was someone that came to my rescue, or, you know, that the right person turned up. So there were a lot of these synchronicities. And, you know, after those 2 months of traveling, you know, I had a really tragic situation happen in Assam where I witnessed the aftermath of a rhino poaching. And, you know, that was my moment where I thought, wow, you know, is working in my industry in telecommunications, is that really what I want to do for the rest of my life? And from that moment, I realized that I really want to make a difference to communities and conservation and animals, and at the same time help people travel safely to India. And since that trip, I've been back 6 times, and I spent 6 months actually in 2010. After the GFC, I lost my job when I came back, and then I decided, you know, I just got out of a destructive relationship, and I just felt this calling again to go to India, and India really, you know, I just fell in love with the country, and it's been 6 times since I've been back, so I've really, awesome. It's a love affair.
yeah, and it seems to have that kind of grab. I just want to pause for a minute. I've noticed there's quite a few people having some techie issues that the videos have frozen, so I just want to make sure that, because we're on a live Google Hangout, that your computer will be using a lot of bandwidth, so make sure you don't have any other browsers or apps, or especially Facebook running, because that uses a lot of bandwidth. And you can also refresh your browser, that should help. And Google Chrome works best with this product. And I've also, there's a sticky note, there's a link to a YouTube video, so if all else fails, click on that. You can watch the live stream through that function, and you can still use the chat box feature. So sorry about jumping in there to let you that, but we do want everyone to be able to see the video fine. So let's move on. I mentioned, you know, many people do feel called to go to India, and I hear that all the time. And the other thing I always hear from anyone who has been there is that India is a place they either love or they hate. I've never really heard anyone kind of give me something in between. So can either of you sort of speak to this idea, and what might lead one person to go one way or the other, and how can we help anyone traveling to India to go more direction in the direction of loving India? So does anyone want to jump out and speak to that?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on that, if that's okay, Reena. I'm sure you do too.
Sure.
Well, for one thing, you know, I have to say that India is not for everyone. And I'm always careful to walk this fine line between, you know, encouraging people who want to go, but I never try to promote India to people who are really not interested. If they're not interested, I say don't go. It's too difficult. It's too difficult. But so that's one thing. So if you feel drawn to go there, you're much more likely to love it. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. And then I think the other thing is attitude, and attitude is important in every aspect of life. There's no question about it. You know, what you bring to a situation is going to largely determine what you get back from it. But for some reason, I've written about this a lot, I feel this is especially true for travel in India. Like, this is like, you know, times pi or something. India is very responsive. And so it kind of mirrors back to you. This is my experience. I've heard it from many people. So whatever attitude you're bringing with you, it's going to be mirrored back to you. So I think attitude is key. You really do have to go with the right attitude to India more than anywhere else, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And Reena, did you want to add anything into that?
Yes, totally. Look, India is a challenging destination. You have both extremes. You know, things can flow really well, and there's times that you will be really challenged. And I find that the one thing that I do tell my clients is to leave your Western expectations at home. You know, because, you know, things are not going to, you won't be getting your coffees on time. You know, things are not going to be running, you know, at the same speed and at the same way as they're running back at home. And the other thing is to take your watch off, because, you know, there's this thing called Indian Standard Time, as you're aware of, Mariellen. You know,
stretchable time.
So, you know, it's just about, you know, just leaving those expectations at home. Also, just being open. And I find that the clients of mine that are really struggling with India or have come back with a not so great experience are really the ones that are not as open and prepared in embracing change. And the other thing is you have to surrender. You have to just surrender when you're there to whatever is going to unfold, because although you can plan as much as you can, and we do that for our clients, we plan as much as we can, but India sometimes has its own plans for you, and you just, you know, you've got to go with the flow at times.
Most of the time.
Yeah. I really love how you say India has plans for you, and it really does seem like India is that kind of place, but I always also get this idea that life is like that, not just travel to India. And when you just be open and you surrender, I just find amazing things happen. And through my travel experiences, I've learnt to do this so much better. And our previous 18 months traveling with children certainly taught me this a lot more as well. And I just think if you can find it within you to tap into that open-mindedness and that surrendering, and Reena, you mentioned earlier you felt like you were supported and synchronicity and all these amazing things happen. When you look at the world through those eyes, then you're just going to love every experience that you do have. I just want to talk about, you mentioned, Reena, that you felt your first trip you weren't really quite prepared for India. And I think there are some countries you can just turn up in and be fine. You don't need to be prepared for. But I'm getting a sense that for India, if you want to have a great time, you do want to be prepared. So can we just talk a little bit about what are some things people do to prepare themselves to go to India, particularly for a woman, and why they should go there as well and not be so afraid?
Like you said, Caroline, I don't think India is that type of place like in Europe. You can turn up in Italy and, you know, you can book a hotel right there and catch a cab and you're set. That definitely is not India. You know, I would recommend, you know, the great thing that is out now, which I didn't have so much in 2007, was the amazing blogs like Mariellen's blogs, going online and finding out some great information, TripAdvisor, have a look at some really good at hotel options. If you're traveling solo, I'd also recommend looking at bed and breakfast options, because they really are a great opportunity to, you know, get immersed in a culture where you can try local foods. You have a host there that will know some local secrets about the area that you're staying at. So planning, preparation. You know, when I first went to India, I thought I was really prepared. I had this beautiful itinerary I created on, you know, in a spreadsheet. I had hotels booked. When I turned up, or when I called ahead, they had given my room away. So there were moments where I just didn't have accommodation to go to. And, you know, again, those synchronicities, things fell into place, and and I found my way out of that situation. But it's really important to look at some great travel companies out there. If you think that solo travel isn't for you, there's some great group tour options, or go with a travel company that does specialise in tours for solo females. It will cost you a little bit more, but in the long run, it might be better to pay a little bit extra to get a driver and a car. If you're doing like long distance travel, rather than relying on trains and connections. Although trains are great, but if you're looking at getting connections to other places, having a driver and a car is a great option.
Reena's talking about travel planning, and I agree with that. I think doing a lot of research and doing your travel research planning is a really good idea. But there's other ways to prepare too, which I think has to do with researching the culture and the etiquette and what's appropriate. Before I went to India, I had the great fortune to stumble upon the Journeywoman site. And
right, yes.
yeah, Journeywoman is amazing. She's been empowering women to travel since the 90s, and she's the pioneer. And on her site, somebody suggested wearing Indian clothes in India. I think this was the game changer for me. And I made the decision. I just made the decision I'm going to wear Indian clothes in India. And this was, when was I doing my research? 2004, probably 2005. And from that day till this, I'm still wearing Indian clothes in India. And it really works for me. I'm a big believer of the when in Rome, do as the Romans do style of travel, and being very respectful of the culture. There's really to be respectful of a traditional culture. And so wearing modest, clothes suits the climate, it suits the culture, and just learning about etiquette. The fact that the genders do not relate the same way they do over here. There's no point in getting your shorts in a knot about that. That's just the way it is. So you do have to be careful how you relate to the opposite gender. So there's getting prepared on a cultural level. And then there's one other type of getting prepared that I think is the most important. Unlike Reena, I'm just kind of a little embarrassed to admit, I had zero plans almost when I went to India. I had over the 6 months, I had a couple of things set up, but basically when I landed, I was just flying by the seat of my pants. And I also agree. I also found that by luck or chance, I can't really take credit for it. Somehow I did have the right attitude. I had the attitude that I was on a quest, and I had this attitude that I was open to everything, and that everything that happened was what was meant to happen, and it was all to teach me and lead me somewhere, and I accepted it all. And I think when you're in the right mindset, it's a very kind of specific mindset, these positive things do tend to happen, these synergistic things. And the whole time I was in India, and the whole time, and that's from 2005 till now, I have felt that there's sort of a, I feel blessed. I do feel blessed. And I do feel I'm being protected and taken care of. I don't know how to explain it, but I think going with the right attitude is also part of the preparation. Reena mentioned about leaving expectations behind, leaving your judgments behind. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think when most people ask me what are 5 things you'd recommend someone pack in their bag or take with them on travel, the number one thing I recommend is an open mind. Because I think if you don't have that, you're going to be going home in a couple of weeks' time. It's too challenging, because everything that you believe and everything you know will be challenged. And unless you have an open mind to welcome that in, you're going to create a lot of unnecessary heartache for yourself, and then you'll be quitting on your dreams. So I just want to dive in, Marielle, you mentioned about wearing Indian clothes and respecting the culture, and I want to talk about that a little bit more, and I want to sort of go into the aspect of the solo female traveller and some things that they can do to, I guess, ward off some of that unwanted attention, because the sort of the picture that is being painted a lot about Indian men is that they're sex addicts just waiting to pounce on foreign women. So I'd love for you to give us some insight. Is that reality, or is that just men in general? And what are some things that women can do in India to protect themselves, to not to ward off those advances, so to speak? Reena, would you like to jump out?
Sorry. Well, firstly, you know, I have male family members that are Indian, so you know, I would not say that all Indian men are sex addicts. There's some beautiful men out there, beautiful Indian men. One thing you do have to realise though is India is a very male-dominated country. You know, times are changing, but you know, there's experiences that I've had over there where, as a female CEO, I haven't been taken as seriously because I'm a female, and you know, I've accepted that, and I don't let it bother me. But I think one of the things that actually does drive this is the media. You know, what is showing on their TVs is Bollywood and Hollywood. You know, this aspect where a beautiful woman is walking down the street and this guy falls in love with her, you know, and declares his love 10 minutes later, and you know, and that's not how life is. You know, so there's this aspect of how the media portrays what is normal, you know, in that kind of that relationship, and also in Hollywood, you know, how the female is perceived as, you know, you can sleep around. Like, not that that's the case, but you know, there's these things that are shown on TV, and I know that does impact what Indian men think about foreign women as well. And it's not all the men. But I have had situations where, you know, I had this lovely rickshaw driver in Jaipur that took me around for a couple of days, and at the end of that, he was a lovely, sweet guy. He declared his love to me. Yeah. You know, it was so innocent and it was so sweet that, you know, it's also the media in aspects. So, and it's not the majority of men. Like, I work with a beautiful, one of my business partners. He's a beautiful man. Sorry, my speaker just fell out. You know, there are men there that are just wonderful, very nurturing, and totally respectful of women. So it's not the case for that all men, Indian men, are sex addicts.
In fact, I just want to add to that. Quite often in India, you'll see things that you just won't see anywhere else. You'll see, you know, like, you know, grown men, middle-aged men, businessmen on a plane, you know, and a baby starts crying, and I mean, in the West, this just wouldn't happen. But the men will start, you know, cooing over the baby and taking care of the baby, and it's a very family-oriented culture. So, you know, it's like in India, everything is true, you know, times, you know, 10. All extremes are there, and you know, some of the most spiritual and enlightened people of the past century, like Gandhi, Pandit Ravi Shankar, beautiful men, come from India. And then, unfortunately, it's a country of 1.2 billion people, and you know, something like 600 million probably don't get enough to eat. They're not well educated, and then there's a stream of migrant workers that you know, pour into cities like Delhi and Mumbai, and and they're being exposed to these Bollywood images, and you know, it's unfortunate that, you know, they get the wrong idea. Most of them are not dangerous, but they can be really annoying. They can stare at you and some of them are sweet. They declare their love for you. So it's not that these problems don't exist. It's not that you don't get unwanted attention and harassment. It's just that I think that when we talk about the media, we have to talk about the fact that the media in India and outside of India has really, really blown these. And certainly, if you look, I'm not a statistician, but if you look statistically at any statistics, India just does not rank high statistics that have to do with rape, tourist attacks, nothing. It's very low statistically. So there, you know, we have to balance, you know, misinformation and both are true, that, you know, you do get unwanted attention, but the way the media sensationalizes and overhypes the situation, all out of proportion to the reality on the ground. I've spent 2 years traveling in India, most of it by myself. I can't think of a time where I felt particularly unsafe. I've had a couple of small incidents, but I've had the same things happen to me here in Toronto. So what I always say, it's not where you travel, it's how you travel. You know, I think it's important to practice safe travel strategies. You know, everywhere, in India, in Toronto, in Thailand, in Spain, in all these different countries. I think it's very important that women practice safe travel strategies, no matter where they are.
Can you offer any that you think are particularly relevant to India travel? Looking into the cultural aspects as well, I'm sure that it definitely ties in the way men and women relate to one another over there.
Well, I think wearing modest clothes is absolutely number one. And again, you can rail against it, and some people think, you know, sometimes when you know, I've had people comment, well, that's like blaming the victim. You know, I don't even want to go down that road. Reality is reality. India is a traditional society for the most part, and in spite of what you see in Bollywood, and wearing modest clothes is just it helps protect you. You know, I believe this, and you know what else it does? It actually engenders respect, because people see that you're interested in the culture, you're making an effort. Yeah. And my experience has been incredibly positive when I'm wearing my Indian clothes, that I feel people regard me in a more respectful and so for me that is number one. You know, there's a whole bunch of other things as well, and I'm sure Reena wants to jump in, like don't arrive at night unless you have somebody there to pick you up at the airport or the train station. Watch how you relate to other genders. I mean, the other gender. How many are there? Well, I guess there's a few now. Watch how you relate. I mean, in Canada, you can flirt with the waiter. In India, no, it's not a good idea.
No.
Reena, did you have anything else to add on to that?
I totally agree with what Mariellen is saying. Like, wearing traditional clothing or modest clothing really does help. You know, there's no reason to draw attention to yourself, and I know that you may want to dress the way that you dress back home, but yeah, India is definitely a traditional society in most aspects. Also, I would suggest, you know, if you are in public areas where there are men, don't give eye contact and don't smile. Smile at the women, but to smile at a man suggests that you're interested. So I would suggest, you know, no unnecessary eye contact, and you know that also works with street vendors as well. Once that eye contact means I'm interested in what you're selling, I'm interested in, you know, what you have to offer. The other thing I suggest is also looking at, I mentioned before, but looking at female-friendly accommodation. You know. There's so much, but yeah, it's really common sense, confidence, acting confident. That's one thing that as soon as I got off the plane, I was like in another state, and I approached myself and others in a very confident manner. Like I knew where I was going. Even if I didn't, I walked like I had a mission, you know, and that really helped me.
I think that's huge. There's been studies done that have shown that men tend to attack women who look vulnerable or afraid. So I think, and this is true, this is not just India specific, like anywhere women travel solo, female travelers, we talk about this all the time when we go solo. Walk with confidence, show confidence, and you'll start to feel it too. You know, it's fake it till you make it, and it's really, really important.
Yeah, just touching on that, I did, when I was in high school, we had someone come in to our school to teach us self-defense lessons, and that was the very first thing they told us, that confidence is going to help protect yourself in many, many ways. And just going back to the whole of, you know, men and violent crime against women and rape that is so widely publicised about India at the moment, this can happen in our own backyard. And I'll just share a story of when I was a teenager, maybe about 16 or 17. I was walking home from school through a park, and there was a group of young men there who were known in the area for being not someone you wanted to bring home to meet your parents anyway. So they went, and they as I walked past them, they did threaten to rape me. So this kind of stuff happens everywhere. It was an extremely scary moment in my life, and I did just act with that confidence to continue walking past them. they were just trying to frighten me. Nothing happened. But it's just, and I've been groped in Australia before in nightclubs and things. So just to be aware that this is not specific to one country. I think we've spoken before about the statistics show that the worst is in South Africa for these kind of things, but you don't hear about it. I've travelled through Africa for a couple of months backpacking. I never had one single issue. So we know this in our life. We experience it in our own backyards. We hear stories of people travelling who've been perfectly safe through these regions. But what some travellers are faced with, particularly women, is having foreign departments, government departments, advising now to not travel to India. So what would you say to a woman considering solo travel in India who's hearing these messages from the government? Because it's one thing to hear it from someone else, but when the government says this, it adds an extra element of fear. So what's your advice in that situation?
Well, I just want to correct you. I don't believe there's any travel advisories telling people not to travel to India. My understanding is what they're saying is use caution and don't travel in certain areas. And this I absolutely agree with. One of my another one of my top tips for travel in India is actually to stay on the beaten path. Normally I'm an off the beaten path traveler, but in India I think this is an exception. I think it's a very good idea to stay within the well-traveled tourist circuit, the Golden Triangle, which is Delhi, Agra, and Jaipur, Rajasthan, Kerala, Goa, Ladakh, which is a remote area, but it's considered to be a very, very woman-friendly area. It's a matriarchal society, as far as I know.
Oh, great.
So I think there's tribal societies in India that are matriarchal as well. So I would say I would agree with the advisories that say, be cautious where you travel in India. I totally agree with that. It's been unfortunate that the couple of incidents that have happened in the last few years that have been highly publicized, quite often they don't mention some of the facts behind these incidents, and when you dig a little deeper, you find out that, in fact, what the women were doing was what I would consider, not a safe travel strategy. They were traveling. One was in a very, very remote tribal area in Madhya Pradesh, and my Indian friends told me they wouldn't travel there. So I think pay attention to the advisories, but use your own judgment. It's like going to a travel medical clinic. Before I went to India, I went to a travel medical clinic. My goodness, they put the fear of God into me. I left for India with half a suitcase full of extra syringes, and I was it was hilarious. I got there and I found out I felt like an idiot. It was perfectly civilized society with very sophisticated medical clinics. I didn't need all that stuff. So people will try to wind you up,
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Reena?
Yeah, look, I know for the Smart Traveller website, they do have to exercise a high degree of caution, but they also have it for some, other countries like parts of Turkey and, like places that people do travel to. Again, I think if you're going to travel as a solo traveller to India, you really have to do your research, and I do agree with sticking to the major tourist areas. If you are going off the beaten track, which is something that I love to do, is make sure you do that with a reputable company, and that you have you're staying at reputable places, because there are some great cheap accommodation in India, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're safe. So
Right.
really do your research as to what parts of the cities that you're staying in. For example, in Delhi, I tend to stay in South Delhi.
Yes.
It's very much it's a safe area. I find that you see a lot of solo female travellers there. So do your research about if you're going to these big cities. Find out the safe parts of these cities to stay in. There will always be, government warnings coming out. They don't say do not travel. They do say do not travel to parts of Jammu and Kashmir. But as a whole, it's a high degree of caution. They say, yeah.
Okay.
I just want to underline the Delhi tip. My top tip for Delhi is to stay in South Delhi. A lot of the budget hotels are in central or north Delhi, and they're just not nice areas. But there's lots of these little boutique places, little guest houses in South Delhi. That's actually my top tip for Delhi.
There you go. Great tip, girl. Thank you.
Love South Delhi.
Very, very useful for everyone listening. So, you know, we have spoken about the media being probably not giving it a fair enough picture. And so, personally, I don't pay attention to the media, so I haven't really heard much about these attacks against women, so I don't have any fear or worry about that. But my hesitation has always been, you know, dealing with the crowds and the poverty. So let's talk about that, as I'm sure there's still some people who do worry about that a little bit. So can you offer any tips about what people can expect and how they can manage that when they're traveling through India?
Yeah, for me, I think, like I said, I've never really had big worries about the safety as a woman, but coming up against crowds and heat, chaos, you know, travel delays. These are on the ground, the things that you're really going to be worrying about more than anything else. And I'm sure Reena's got some really good travel advice for you. But what I will say is I've been able to stay in India for very long stretches of time this winter, 7 months, because I have sanctuaries. I've got 2 sanctuaries. So finding sanctuaries that you can go to. You just can't be out there in India for long stretches of time. You've got to, like I go to a yoga ashram near Rishikesh, or you can hit the beach in Goa. I stay with an Indian family in Delhi. That's my other sanctuary. Kerala has beautiful beaches. You know, there's wonderful little places you can stay out in the countryside in Rajasthan. I know a few that are gorgeous. You know, you've got to find these sanctuaries where you can just, you know, get away from the crowds and the noise and just unwind. I think that's key if you want to stay in India more than a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of crowds, I don't really, for me, because I tend to travel mostly to wildlife national parks and I'm really into nature, I guess that's my sanctuary, is as what Mariellen calls it. But you know, finding parts of the city that aren't too crowded, like South Delhi, I don't find it very crowded at all when I stay there. But obviously, you will see crowds. You know, you will notice when you're standing in lines that that the level of you know, how people stand so close to you, your personal space will be invaded. You know, and so that's just you know, part of the India experience, I would say. But once you venture out of the cities, you know, there's villages, and you know, you don't see so much poverty when you're in villages, and when you're out in nature or you're up in the Himalayas, it's totally different. So, you know, crowds are one aspect of India, but it isn't everything. It's not every part of India.
That's true.
And what about your experiences with the slums and the poverty? Do you have any tips of what travellers can expect and what they can do here, particularly with things like beggars on the street and that as well?
Yeah, look,
sorry, go ahead.
Okay. I've actually found over the past, you know, 7 years of going, you know, back and forth to India, I don't really see too much, you know, for example, in Delhi, there aren't as many beggars as what there used to be. But I don't personally support slum tourism, you know, and I do get requests about, you know, I'd like to do a slum tour, and I find quite insensitive to the locals. Yeah, so like we advise our clients not to give money to beggars, and that money doesn't actually go to that child or to that. You know, it's an organised system. You know, it goes up to a higher person. So, you know, and the government doesn't recommend doing that as well. What I do is I do bring, you know, little koala clips and little toys that I find that I love to see, you know, kids' eyes light up. And, you know, those koala clips are awesome. I get really sad about seeing stray dogs, So, you know, I do tend to sometimes buy some food for dogs, or, you know, if I do get approached, if someone's selling me something, I will probably buy it. But if it's a beggar, I don't usually give money. That's my tip, is not, it's not going direct to them.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah, I agree with everything Reena said. I also don't personally support slum tourism. I don't go into the slums, so that's really not really an issue. Of course, you do see poverty, you do see beggars on the street. That's for sure. But you know, one thing I think people would probably be surprised. I mean, I've heard this many times over the years. I've been a travel blogger about India. They're worried about you know, seeing this poverty and the effect it'll have on them. And I think they don't realize that it may have exactly the opposite effect than what they imagine. In fact, seeing it, you know, up close and personal humanizes it. And what you find out is these are people. These are their lives. You know, there's some extreme poverty in India, but for the most part, poor people live, you know, lives of dignity and respect. And even in this big slum in Mumbai that's so famous, a lot of people are writing about it now. There's a lot of industry there, and there's a lot of pride. And you know, you might be absolutely surprised to look this in the face and realize one other thing, which is, you know, a lot of these people are happier and more content than you think. I don't want to make it kind of a blanket statement, but they're humans, you know, they're living their lives just like we're living our lives, and to refrain from judgment and just see them as another human is actually a really beautiful, eye-opening thing, and that could transform your life in a very, very positive way, and much more than you think. You might think it's going to be some dark, negative, horrible experience, and you might find, as I did, in fact, it was exactly the opposite.
Agreed. Can I just add one thing to that? Is one thing I do say to my clients is, you know, observe from a place of compassion, you know, just without judgment, without any, you know, the Western judgment that we have about, you know, what we think poverty looks like. Just observe, like when you're looking, you know, at whatever it is, just come from a place of compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting a sense because India does seem to have the extremes. Like it's well known for its poverty, but it's so well known for its spirituality. And you kind of think, well, how can these two things exist, and how can they have these, you know, high spirituality, but then there's these issues that we hear, which is media sensationalized about attacks on women, etc. But I'm starting, and I've wondered that myself, but just hearing you talk then, I'm kind of getting a picture now of how this works. I mean, you go there and you're saying you get cracked open by this poverty, which teaches you how to be humble and compassionate and all these things, which then leads to spirituality.
And leads you to fall in love with India.
Right, yes. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm really getting a sense now of why India is one of those special destinations and how it can really change your life and your attitude and perception.
In fact, I have an Indian guru. I go to an ashram there. I've been going for 9 years, and I asked the founder, what is so special about India? Why do so many seekers? India is the destination for seekers. It always has been since certainly the time of the Beatles and long before the Beatles. It's always been the destination for seekers, and I asked him why, and his answer was surprising, and he said it's because the extremes are there. The extremes of spirituality, the extremes of materialism, the extremes of enlightenment, the extremes of brutality. It's because India has these extremes in measure that makes it the soul of the world. He called India the soul of the world.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful.
And I feel that too. And you know, I've had a client that's actually, you know, stayed in ashrams, and then afterwards they've stayed in a homestay with us in Varanasi. And one of the comments that I got back from her was her experience just being with the family that she was had changed her more than being in the ashram. So what I got from that and what I feel from that is that, you know, the real heart and soul of India are the people. You know, the Indian hospitality is out of this world, and the connections and the people that you meet, people are really there to help you. You know, if is happening out in the open. Look, if someone accidentally touches you or there's a situation, you know, all you need to do is speak up, and you will have a ton of people coming to help you. You know, there's a friend of mine, a family friend, that was travelling on a train, and she had been groped, and she spoke up about it. And you know, it was a slow-moving train, but the perpetrator that had done this, because she spoke up, a group of people threw this person off the train.
Yes.
You know, so it's people power, and people will be there to support you.
That's so comforting to know.
I absolutely agree with that. Social shaming works really well in India. When people ask me, you know, why I love India, the first thing I say is the people. People in India are warm and helpful. They have a saying in India, "Atithi Devo Bhava," which means guest is God. And it's, you know, but a lot of the time, that is how you're treated. That you're a God visiting their home, and a lot of the time, you know, they do follow this philosophy. It is a deeply embedded philosophy within the culture, and I felt it many times over there. And the other thing is, I agree with Reena that if something happens to you, you could be like in the market bargaining with somebody who's trying to get maximum rupees from you, you know, and then if you were like to trip and sprain your ankle, he would be the first guy to run and help you and pick you up and make sure you were okay. I travel all over India by myself as a solo woman. And one of the main reasons I feel comfortable doing that is because I know it's a community-oriented society. The people around me will help me if I'm in trouble. I feel that way more strongly about India than I do about my own country of Canada, where the people are very decent. Yes. But I feel that more strongly about India, and I really need to make this point.
Yeah, I think it's a very important point to make. And as you said, there's that sense of community there, which just naturally makes you feel safer, and I don't think we have that as much in the Western world. So it is nice to hear that about India, and I think your previous point about wearing Indian clothes is also a way to connect with the people of India. And I know, I mean, I haven't been to India, but I know I've used that myself in other countries. Things like learning some of the language and connecting with them, even if you just say hello in their language. That just opens up, even a smile, it just opens up conversation. And when
in India, that's easy because it's namaste. We all know namaste, right?
We all know that. My children know that.
Yeah. And you know, when you put your hands like this, namaste.
Yeah.
And that's it. There you go. You're on your way.
It just breaks down barriers straight away because it's such an honourable way of greeting one another. Even my 3-year-old, she does yoga on the internet, so she knows namaste, and it's so cute when she says it. And it's just a way to break down barriers and get that connection, because if you connect with the people of a country, I think that's when you have those memorable experiences that make you want to keep coming back. I just want to talk a little bit about organised tours. Now, for me, I do have that kind of sense of feeling a little uncomfortable going to India. So do you think for a solo traveller it's a good idea to go over there on a tour? Now, Reena, you have a tour company, so maybe if we jump to you first, and if you can let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think it really depends on what your budget is. I think what you need to work out is, what are your reasons for travelling to India? You know, what is it that you really want to get out of it? What do you want to tell people when you come back about your trip? What do you want to talk about? So figure out whether you like that. India has something for everyone. So are you into nature? Are you after a spiritual experience? Are you after you know, safaris, or you know, going up to the Himalayas, or are you wanting to really immerse yourself in the culture? If you're wanting that extra level of protection and comfort and safety, I think traveling with a travel company is a great thing to do. You know, some of the things that I personally do for my clients is we give them a mobile phone, and whether you're traveling with a travel company or not, I think getting a mobile phone in India is a really good idea. I've just lost my train of thought. The other thing that we do for our clients is we use solo female traveller friendly accommodation. So again, whether you do that with a travel company or not, look for those accommodation places that are more catered to solo female travellers, and bed and breakfasts are an awesome way to travel around India. And we also do brief the properties about if we have someone that's travelling solo. So there's an extra level of attention and care that we do. We have my partner in India. She's on the ground, and we give our clients her mobile number, so she's available for our clients. So there's always that level of comfort knowing that if something happens, or if I need to clarify something, that I have someone to speak to. So, you know, and when I was traveling solo myself, I found that having a mobile phone, when I was traveling at night, I was actually communicating with a friend in Goa who was a travel agent that I'd met, and he was calling ahead to the property to let them know about my delays. So I felt much safer knowing that I had someone there, you know, looking after me, you know, while I was traveling. And especially if you're going off the beaten track, I would suggest doing that with a travel company. If you're a little bit, you know, scared for your first time and you might want to, you know, travel with someone else, see if there's you know, another friend of yours that wants to travel. I've personally matched up 2 women that have wanted to travel together, just from the inquiries that I've gotten. But yeah, find another a travel buddy, or do a group tour. There's some really great group tours that do go off the beaten track as well.
Great, thank you. Did you have anything to add to that, Mariellen?
No, I think Reena, you know, basically covered it. She said everything that I would say. You know, as a host of a female solo chat, one thing I always talk about is staying within your comfort zone. I mean, nobody's, you know, we do have to overcome our fears to a certain degree, of course, or we just never leave the house. But just be honest with yourself about what you can handle and what you can't handle. And one thing I recommend to a lot of people is to, you know, start with a group tour, and then if you're going to stay longer in India, at least you've got, you know, so there's a big learning curve to being in India, and to just land there and have to deal with the learning curve about being there, plus all the logistics, plus all the onslaught on your senses and everything else. It's really, really a lot to handle. I don't really recommend it. When I went there the first time, I stayed with a friend in Delhi. I still stay in the same house, say Punjabi family. I'm like one of the family now after almost 10 years. And I didn't do a group tour, but you know, I had this family that I was staying with. So you need to have something. You need to have somebody, a friend there. Or you need to have a group tour. You need to do something. Yeah, I would say.
I think that's really important about you know, we have to overcome our fears, but that idea of you know, not going so far out of your comfort zone that you do fall apart, which can happen. So to use a crux, something like a guided tour company is a really great idea to feel protected and safe, but still push your boundaries a little bit so that you can grow. What we might do now, we're sort of gone for an hour now, so I know that some people have probably scheduled an hour out, so some people might want to leave. So what I'm going to do now is just send people to the link where they can get their bonuses, just in case anyone wants to leave now, and then if you ladies are up for it, we can still stay and answer some of these questions, because there's some great questions coming through
from the
participants. So what's going to happen with your bonuses for everyone listening, soon you'll get something fly out onto your screen that's going to direct you to a website. You can just click on that. It will take you to a page on our site, and that is where you're going to find how you get access to your bonuses. So just be looking for that when that flies out onto your screen. And then if you need to head on out, if you need to go, I know everyone's busy and got things happening, then by all means leave. You can catch this in the replay. We'll send an email to you with the replay of this so that you can come and watch it at any time and get the answers to these questions. So let's jump on out then to some of these questions. So, so Megan asks, what are your must-see monuments or temples in India?
That is such a big question. Yeah, You know, India is huge. I've been traveling in India for years, and I feel like I've scratched the surface. Most people head to the Taj Mahal. Yeah, it is actually a must-see. But beyond that, boy, it's even a hard question to answer. There's so much in India. That's the thing. Khajuraho, there's Hampi, there's
Khajuraho is beautiful.
There's temples everywhere in India. There's incredible historical sites. Rajasthan is a state filled with palaces. It's really not an easy question to answer. It's an ancient civilization that's got just an unbelievable amount to see and do. But my top piece of advice would be to pick an area. It's a huge country. It's the 7th largest on Earth, and it's very rich. It's very dense. And it's tiring to travel from one place to another. So don't try to get all over the country. Like, pick an area, and depending on how long you're there, and concentrate on 1 or 2 areas. That's my advice.
That's actually a really good point, Mariellen, is if you're spending a certain amount of time in India, and I recommend no less than 3 weeks in India, and just pick a few places that you want to see, because there's so much to see. And I've gone back, 6 times, and I've only scratched the surface. There are monuments and temples all over India. So
everywhere.
It just depends on what parts you're really interested in seeing, and you will definitely see monuments in those areas.
Okay, great. Some good tips there. A question from Sabina. If I'm interested in staying in an ashram, do I have to contact a specific centre previously to program the stay, or should I get there and ask for permission? How does that work, and how do I find these places?
I've got some information on my blog. If you go on breathedreamgo.com and just in the search bar put ashram, you'll find some good articles on finding an ashram and what to expect. Rishikesh is kind of a concentration of, there's ashrams all over India, but not all of them appeal to foreigners, and believe me, the ones that don't appeal to foreigners probably don't want to stay in unless you're really got a very, very serious spiritual practice. So Rishikesh is a great starting place, because it's kind of like the Miami Beach of ashrams. There's just tons and tons of ashrams there, and it does appeal to foreigners, and you do have to contact them ahead of time. Most of the time there's no previous experience needed, but they do require that you're there as with sincerity, as a genuine seeker, and that you follow the basic rules.
Mm-hmm. Great. Anything to add to that, Reena, or?
Look, I'm not really big at staying at ashrams. I have helped clients organise that for them, but contacting them directly, and also Rishikesh is definitely a place that has a concentration of ashrams, and in the south as well, in South India.
Okay, great. Now, Natasha asked, and Kin's interested in the answer as well, can you recommend any spiritual places to visit in South India?
In South India?
Well, there's a lot of yoga ashrams, if that's what you mean, in Mysore, for instance. But, everywhere in India is spiritual. South India is particularly spiritual. There's a lot of temples there. I'm not 100% sure what you mean. It depends on what you're looking for. There's Vipassana meditation. There's yoga ashrams. We'd probably need a more specific question, I think.
Okay, so if you wanted to, Natasha, feel free to jump back out and maybe clarify a little bit further what you were looking for. And so just in the meantime, Kin asked, is it risky to get to India with no itinerary and just let things take their course? I've had people tell me not to make too many plans for India, but at the same time I know that being safe requires some planning, and Kin would just like to know your thoughts.
What I would suggest is, if you want to kind of go with the flow, at least get your first couple of destinations and hotels sorted. Try and organise a driver and transfers from the airport to your accommodation. As long as and that's what I did in 2009. I found myself a place that I was going to stay for in a couple of months, actually for about 6 months. So I actually got to India. I stayed with some family friends, and then I went looking for some accommodation, but I found I had a place to stay first. So I think it's important to get yourself a base first, and then if you want to organise travel, that's definitely possible from there.
Yep, agree.
And Natasha has just clarified she means temples and ashrams in South India.
Okay, there's temples everywhere, and I mean everywhere. It's, you know, it's like 7-Elevens here in Canada. So no worries about temples. And then ashrams, ashrams. It's probably better, unless, as I said, you've got a very serious spiritual practice. It's probably better to stick to ashrams that cater to foreigners. There's a very big famous one in South India, which is, of course, the Shivananda ashram near in Nayar Dham, which is near Trivandrum. That's a place a lot of foreigners go to. So it just will take some research to find out about ashrams. There's a lot of in Goa. There's a lot of sort of on the beach ashrams. I don't know how serious they are in terms of ashrams, but there's a lot of yoga retreats now in India that cater to foreigners, especially in Goa and some in Kerala. So you could do some research on those.
I would also suggest Karnataka. The state of Karnataka has some amazing Jain monuments and temples in a place called Belur. And there's one in particular that's called, it's really hard for me to pronounce, but Shravana Belagola. And it's this amazing statue built out of a single piece of stone. Apparently it's the largest statue out of one single piece of stone. And that's pretty amazing to see. So, yeah, Karnataka as well as Kerala, but Karnataka has some pretty amazing monuments and temples there too.
Okay, great. We might move on to Shirley has asked, what additional precautions do you need to take regarding train travel?
Book well in advance. The train absolutely books out. I mean, we're talking 1.2 billion people. They use the train. Book well in advance. That's my top tip. I love taking the train in India. I spend a lot of time on the trains. I don't really have any big worries about it. Some people say, it's really important to watch your luggage. So what I do is I have a cable lock. I just lock my luggage to my seat or my berth or whatever, and I don't really worry about it. I have never had a negative incident on a train. Just book well in advance.
Okay.
I would also suggest the same thing, having a cable lock, and if you can get an upper berth sleeper, so that you're not on the ground. That's always a safer place to sleep. And one thing that I also do is I make myself known to the train conductor on there. I let him know. The thing is, for me, that I find that I can't, all the signs are in Hindi, so I don't really know what my next stop is. So I always ask the train conductor, can you please let me know when I get to my stop? And they seem to keep an eye out for you because you're travelling on your own.
Yeah, what a great tip. That's awesome. We'll move on to Sidoni asks, she wants to know where to stay and live like an Indian. Any?
Wow. If you want
you could stay with my friends.
If you want to experience staying with a local family, I think that's great. Like doing a bed and breakfast homestay experience would be really good. And they're actually really good for long-term stays. So the one that I've stayed in Delhi was by a single female, and we're now, the best of friends. And I found it really safe and just comforting staying with another woman.
And how can you go?
I've stayed in the same place. We're also the best of friends.
Sounds like a great place to stay. And how can someone go about booking or connecting with a homestay? Shirley's asked that question, so I think we'll answer that one now while we're talking about it.
Well,
I think it's
you can use services like Flipkey or Airbnb, or TripAdvisor has guest houses and homestays on it. Sorry, go ahead.
I totally agree. Airbnb is a good option. I would also just make sure the homestays and the bed and breakfast that we use in our company, they're registered with the government of India. So we know that there's a certain level of standard that they're using. You know, the rooms have to be a certain size, the bathrooms have to be a certain way. So, you know, do your research online, or you can book with a travel company. But yeah, really, there are so many homestays in India. It's just making sure that you're staying in a good one that's in a good part of the city.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Edie's asked a really great question when we were talking about, you know, dealing with the poverty and beggars. And can you buy them a meal if they ask for money?
I don't usually buy meals for people, but I'll tell you something. If I'm in a nice restaurant and there's like leftovers, I'll pack it up and I'll give it to someone. Or sometimes if I'm just eating, this happens all the time near where I stay. I'll be eating like a bag of peanuts or something, and I'll be walking by the beggars who are on the street corners. And if the kids look like they want the peanuts, I just hand them the peanuts. Things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. Do you want it? Yep.
Oh, look, similar for me, and it really just go with what your gut says or how you feel. You know, that's really a personal thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Gut will always tell you the right thing to do. We're going to have a question from a male. Harold has a couple, and Harold's really interested about Varanasi and the Ganges River. So, can a first-time traveller to India safely visit Varanasi and the Ganges River, and have you bathed in the Ganges, and any specific suggestions for visiting?
I would say, for me, it's Rishikesh. I don't have any problem going into the Ganges bathing in Rishikesh, because this is the place where the river comes out of the mountains, and it's at the beginning of its journey through towns and things like that, and it's actually very clean. It's cold, it's glacial, but it's very, very clean in Rishikesh. I personally would not get into the river in Varanasi.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Mariellen. I've actually bathed in the Ganges in Haridwar, which is it's actually the first city just before Rishikesh. So it's a first city that the Ganges runs through, and it's called the Gateway to the Gods. And I found it a really amazing experience doing that myself. Totally agree. I would not do that in Varanasi, but there's some amazing things that you can do in Varanasi on the Ganges. You can do a morning boat ride and really get to see, you know, what the locals do, the religious practices. It's quite amazing. And then the evening aarti as well. So that's another really beautiful experience to do. And then walking down some of the back streets of Varanasi. And we do use a really good bed and breakfast in Varanasi. So another good option is staying at a guest house or a homestay in Varanasi.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So I hope that helps with your travel. Harold also wanted to know, when we were talking about booking train travel well in advance, how in advance do you recommend?
Well, there's I can't remember whether it's 2 months or 3 months, and they actually recently changed it. Do you know, Reena? They actually only release tickets either 2 months or 3 months before, so you can't book before that. So whatever, if it's 2 months, try to, you know, count back 2 months. For you know, when they actually release the tickets. Honestly, in some cases, as soon as you can, as soon as you know, for the well-traveled routes, and otherwise, I would say a month is probably enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree as well.
Marsha has asked, do you take malaria prevention when you are staying only in major tourist areas?
I don't.
Reena, do you take?
I don't, but I always do recommend to my clients that you need to feel comfortable with what vaccinations and what precautions you take. So I would recommend visiting your doctor or health practitioner or naturopath or whoever it is that you see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
that's good advice. Good advice.
Being comfortable as well.
Yeah.
Again, taking it back to that.
And look, if you're staying, you know, like in South India or places where it's really hot, there will be mosquitoes. So you do need to think about what level of precaution you're going to take for malaria.
It's not just malaria. In fact, my understanding is that India is not one of the hotspots for malaria compared to a place like Africa, where you're more at risk. But there's also dengue fever, is another mosquito-borne illness, and there's no protection against that. No. So in India, I think it's just wise to not get bit by mosquitoes, and just don't. Use spray, long sleeves. Just try not to get bit. I really do go out of my way to try not to get bit, honestly. Mosquito netting. You can even carry portable mosquito netting. Just try not to get bit.
Yeah. Eat a lot of Vegemite. Apparently, it's got lots of vitamin C.
There are also some really great essential oils that you can use for mosquito prevention if you want to go down the natural route. And I can send you the link to that, Kaz, if
yeah, sure, and I'll pop it on that resource page that we sent everyone to before, so they can get that there. That'd be great. Thank you.
I use one that's very popular in India that I buy there called Odomos. I'm sure you know Odomos. I use Odomos, and it seems reasonably. I don't know. It seems reasonably non-toxic to me, and it seems to work.
Okay, great. So I have Sabina. Should I take special precautions with food? I've heard that it is usual for tourists to get sick with it.
Yeah, look, I've had my first trip to India. I did get sick, and the reason is I stopped at. I didn't stop at the most cleanliest place to eat. And that really impacted the rest of my travel. I was sick for a few weeks. So what I would suggest is making sure you're drinking bottled water. Eat only cooked food. So stay away from salads. Even if there's chili on the side, I would probably not recommend that. Those would be my main things: is to make sure that food you eat is cooked. Fruit. Ones that you can peel, so bananas, oranges, things like that. Things that are washed in water, that's what you have to be concerned with. So if it's cooked, then it's fine.
And water, what I've heard is it's usually water, and water can kind of sneak up on you. It could be water from the tap. A lot of people brush their teeth with bottled water. It could be ice cubes. Water has a sneaky way to infiltrate your life. Opening your mouth in the shower. I mean, shut your mouth when you're in the shower. Seriously, it's water more than food is what I've heard that you really, really have to be careful of. Although I do agree with what Reena's saying, but be very, very careful about water. I've never been really sick in India. I haven't had that experience. I've gotten belly belly, and usually, what I do is I drink. Those oral rehydration salts packets. The ORS they're called. I always travel with those, and when I get touch of belly, I mix those with water, and I drink a lot of those, and usually by the next day I'm fine. I haven't really I've been lucky, I think.
Yeah, and I know coconut water is full of lots of natural electrolytes as well. So
exactly. Hydrate. If you get sick, you have to hydrate. That's the key thing. It's really important.
And Edie's just mentioned that she had dengue fever 2 times and highly recommends using a spray with DEET. And I just wanted to mention that because when we took the girls to Thailand and I spoke to my doctor, and I don't want to put DEET on them because, obviously there's a lot of bad things in there. And he said, look, you're only going to be using it once or twice. The alternative is they get really sick. Yeah. And that's going to affect them more than what putting the DEET on their skin would for, a short length of time. And that really made a lot of sense to me. And I obviously look for alternative methods always, but I guess as Edie's saying, in situations if you just really want to ensure you're not going to get dengue fever, then sometimes you might just want to put some DEET on. And we'll jump to Ash. Ash also asked about the food, so we've covered that. But another question was, has anyone travelled to the Sangam in Allahabad, with the confluence of three rivers?
I've never been.
No.
No, no. Sorry, Ash, we can't help you out with that one.
I have been to the Kumbh Mela. If she's talking about the Kumbh Mela, which is the big spiritual gathering that happens, it happens in different places. The big one happens in Allahabad, but I have been to the one in Haridwar, and I had quite an amazing experience there, and I have written about it, if that's what you mean. But I haven't been to the Sangam.
Okay. Another question coming back to train travel. Shirley wants to know, does the Indian train system accept payment online with US credit cards, which seems to be a problem for her in Europe?
Just American Express.
Okay, there you go. That's strange, because in Australia most places don't take American Express.
Go figure.
Quick question to Mariellen.
India.
Quick question to Mariellen. Do you book your trains online? Because obviously I have my local team in India that does it for me. So how easy is it for you to book it online?
Yeah, I sort of remember setting it up originally was a nightmare, because as a foreigner you have to give them scanned passports and everything. I don't know if it's still like that, but when I first set up my account on Indian Railways, IRCTC, it was a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. But once I got it set up, then I found it quite easy to use, and I often use Make My Trip, or I've also tried Clear Trip. There's they have different services, online services that can help you in India. Make My Trip is the big one, so I have an account with them, and but sometimes as a foreigner getting these things set up, like getting a SIM card, you do have to jump through a few more hoops than you would in other countries. You have to bring copies of your passport, copies of your visa, those little extra passport pictures. You should always carry a bunch of those things with you to set up these things, because they're always required. I also took my passport and had it scanned, including the page with my visa, and I have scans of my passport, and I've often had to email those to different places. So there's sort of extra things you need to do in India because of the bureaucracy. So it's just being prepared for that. Or just go through a travel agent. Find somebody good who can do all your bookings for you. There's that option as well.
Yeah, great idea.
And sometimes I've actually found that the benefits of being a travel agent, like not being able to get, if I've needed to get tickets for a client that's been kind of, the last couple of weeks, there are certain things that we can do to kind of push that. So there are benefits to going with a travel company for things like, booking trains and drivers and things. Yeah.
Definitely bringing back that comfort level again too. Sorry,
I just want to mention one more thing about the trains. I don't really recommend this, but just so that you know, as a backup, it's available. There is a foreign quota system. So in a couple of train stations in India, in Delhi for sure, I believe also in Mumbai, there's an office you can go to. It's kind of like a scene from a Kafka play. It's just it's not fun. It's like this old office with this massive lineup of people, and the air is not moving, and it's just pretty awful. But if you're desperate, you can go there and you can line up. Go first thing in the morning. That is my top tip there. Go first thing in the morning. Find out when it opens, and you go to this foreign booking office at New Delhi. It's NDLS, New Delhi train station, and you can get the foreign quota. You can sometimes get seats on a train under the foreign quota if you're really desperate. But it's not I wouldn't recommend it unless I was desperate.
Okay, that's a useful tip for people to know if they're in that situation. Just coming back to the water, Natasha's asked about brushing teeth with tap water. Now I know that just from my experiences, don't do it. Because you could swallow that water. It's not worth the risk. I've done it before in Asia, and I just wouldn't recommend it. I did get sick. I don't know if it was from brushing my teeth with the water or not, but I would just not risk it. Thanks for joining us, Cliff. Just Cliff going. But Ken asked, which is quite interesting, I'm guessing the answer is no, but is it unsafe to shave with India's tap water? No response.
I don't think so.
I don't think the water would go in your mouth. So
no, it's just you're not worried about it on your skin or something. You're worried about ingesting it. It's the digestive issue. It's not. Yeah.
I guess maybe when you're shaving though, I'm guessing it would open up the pores.
That's not
if you cut or anything like that.
Yeah, that's not the problem. The problem is digestive.
Okay, cool. Natasha asked, can you talk about travelling by bus?
No.
Don't do it?
Look, from my experiences, don't. I would go with trains and cars, car and a driver.
And planes. Plane travel in India
And
is
planes.
relatively cheap, and the domestic air travel safety record in India is phenomenally high. It's one of the best in the world, actually. They've got some excellent airlines in India, and these little short hop flights are not very expensive.
Okay.
India's quite accessible. Like these, a lot of the cities are very accessible by planes.
Okay. And is that the bus reason because of safety concerns in regards to accidents, or is it personal safety and being
Yes.
Both.
Both. Okay.
Both. It's not comfortable. There's lots of accidents. No.
Okay.
My experience was really hanging on for my life with half a bum cheek on the seat.
You got half a bum cheek? Oh,
yeah.
you're lucky.
Yeah.
It sounds a lot like travel in Africa. Some of your best stories comes from the public transport.
The chicken bus. What do they call it? The chicken bus.
Oh yeah, there are all sorts of things over there, but yeah, one of them's the chicken bus.
The truth is that India's roads are very dangerous. They have a lot of accidents. I'm sorry to say that. I'm not happy about it, but there is a lot of accidents on the roads in India, and when you go there, you can easily see why immediately.
Yeah, it's something that's of concern. So there's some great tips. Thank you. Sierra asks, I have a Steri pen for my camping backpacking. Does it work for overseas travel too, for killing all the bacteria?
I carry with the travel size Steri pen. I like to have it as a backup. I have used it in India.
Okay, great. We have one last question here at the moment from Kin. What is the length of time permissible for Canadian visas? I bought a ticket already 6 weeks. I hope that's not an issue.
I'm not sure I understand the question. How long does it take to get a visa in Canada for India? Is that the question?
Sounds like more the time frame.
Yeah, maybe the time frame. Ken, if you're still on, if you could just maybe clarify that. Are you asking the length of time that you get a visa for, or how long it takes in application process?
I will mention though, sorry, there is the e-tourist visa, which has recently started for many countries, including Canada and Australia. And if you're travelling within 30 days, then it's a really good and quick option for a visa. You only really need 48 hours. I would recommend at least a couple of weeks before you travel, though, to apply. But it's all instant. It's online. For Australians, you do need to, you can go with that option, or if you're staying longer, you can apply for a tourist visa, and you can get up to 6 months. It is important, though, if you are travelling like to other countries like Sri Lanka or Bhutan and then coming back into India, make sure you get a visa with multiple entries, not single entries, otherwise you won't be able to get back in the country.
Okay.
The situation is pretty much identical to that for Canada, although these things are really changing. India is trying to make their visa process easier and smoother. They're talking about giving Canadians the option of actually having a 10-year tourist visa, believe it or not. It's best to get recent information, to go online and get the most recent information.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ken just has clarified, the visa for a 6-week stay in India. So is that possible?
Then you can't use the e-tourist visa because it's only for 30 days. If you want to stay for 6 weeks, you have to go through the regular process and get the 6-month tourist visa.
Okay. Okay. We have Shirley just wants to know: are there any luggage restrictions on air travel? I guess from a domestic standpoint.
Domestic, usually it's like with Air India, it's usually 15 kgs for the cheaper tickets. If you wanted to go for 23 kilograms, I would suggest paying a little bit extra so that you have more baggage requirements. I'm not sure about the other airlines, but usually domestically the baggage is less, usually about 5 to 10 kgs less than the international baggage. But I would suggest just checking with the airline websites.
Great. And we've got one last question from Natasha. What is the best time of year to travel in South India?
Well, what do you think, Reena?
It depends on the type of travel you want to do. You know, monsoon is actually a great time for some national parks in India because it's more of an adventure, you know, and everything's really green. If you're wanting to do a wellness retreat and doing like a panchkarma process, maybe the off-season would actually be a little bit cheaper and it might be a better time. I would suggest, though, if you're not wanting to travel when it's really, really hot, any time from October through to, you know, late February, March is the less hot time.
The less hot of hot.
Yes.
Okay, so if we don't have anything else to add, I think we might wrap that up there. I might just, if it's not still out there, I might just put out that web page again that you can go to grab your free bonuses for joining us on the webinar. So thank you. It's been great. It's been awesome to have you both here sharing your tips about India and helping solo travellers, particularly in women, feel safe and comfortable. I know I feel much better now, and I think India seems like a destination I actually would love to explore more, and I definitely feel a lot more comfortable with having you on here. And I think that was the purpose of this, was to you know, share with people who have that calling that India is a place to visit and you can go there and have a wonderful time and not feel so threatened or afraid. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
To you.
Oh, we have one more question from Sierra. Do you think we can throw it in there?
Sure.
I want to buy most or all of my clothes for India. When in India? How inexpensive is it to get the clothes custom made, or should I just buy them pre-made?
No, this is actually something I always recommend. You know, there's a few things you want to bring: comfortable shoes, underwear. I don't know. I don't like the bras in India, but in terms of getting your Indian outfits, yeah, just head straight to Fab India. There's a store called Fab India, and they're all over the place. There's a couple of big ones in Delhi, and just go straight there, and you can get some things off the rack. You can get some things made for you later, but just when you get off the plane, just, you know, go straight to Fab India. That's what I recommend.
Awesome.
I agree. Fab India is one of my favourite places, and Anoki in India as well. Two awesome shops.
Great. Just before we sign off, can you just let everyone know, starting with you, Reena, where can people connect with you?
I'm on Twitter at Mantra Wild. I'm also on Facebook, Mantra Wild as well. And I'm also on Instagram at Mantra Wild, MANTRAWILD. Want some more tips, or you know, you have any further questions, feel free to email me, which is info@mantrawild.com.au.
Great, thank you. And Mariellen?
Yes, I'm Breathe, Dream, Go everywhere on the web. Breathe with an E at the end. Breathe, Dream, Go. And so I have a travel blog. I've got like literally over 400 articles, tips, stories, advice, things like that on breathedreamgo.com. So please visit. And you can find me literally anywhere on the internet as Breathe, Dream, Go on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, you name it. And yeah, feel free to get a hold of me. You will see the contact tab on my blog, breathedreamgo.com.
Awesome. And I'm ytravelblog.com, and all the relevant social my name on social media is at ytravelblog. And we'll be sending you an email with links to this replay, and I will also put a link to that resource page for you as well. So thank you so much for joining us. Remember the hashtag WeGoSoloIndia. Use that. We'll be checking it, and we can chat more about travel in India through there with you. So thank you so much.
Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste. Namaste to all our attendees.